This presentation continues on my previous video, titled 4 Common Reasons for Atheism, and gives 2 additional prevalent reasons for why many people choose atheism. Once again, even these 6 reasons put together are not necessarily exhaustive. However, I do believe that they are significant reasons in the minds of many atheists, and that they deserve consideration. Reason number 5 is upbringing and fundamental intellectual framework. Just as many individuals become certain of their religious convictions from being raised in a particular faith, so do many atheists lack a belief in a deity, in part because they were not raised in such a belief. None of their parents, and few other adult authority figures in their lives, actively encouraged or cultivated a belief in a god, so no such belief emerged. In the meantime, the young implicit atheists developed an entire worldview, which did not require the presence of a god to explain any aspect of existence. And while atheism was not their positive worldview was atheistic in the sense that it did not contain any deities in it. Many of the conclusions which an atheist with this background has arrived at and implemented in his everyday life are so deeply rooted in his basic worldview that to introduce an entirely foreign element like a god into such a worldview would overturn everything and leave the atheist confused and skeptical of the morality of even elementarily good actions. Many of the same ethical and practical conclusions are of course consistent with both belief and disbelief in a god. But there is no guarantee that abandoning an intellectual framework that took a lifetime to develop will lead the atheist to develop another equally formidable framework in a much shorter time period. The same argument, of course, applies to a religious individual with respect to his faith, especially if such a faith underlies the majority of his ethical and practical conduct. It is not advisable for him to abandon his religious framework unless he is certain to replace it with a more extensively developed non-religious one. Otherwise, he might lose the motive to pursue actions that are moral irrespective of their justification. And for me, and for many other conscientious atheists, what matters more about an individual is not the content of his abstract beliefs, but the morality of his behavior, whether he is a fundamentally honest person, fundamentally civil person, a person of integrity, who abstains from robbing and killing others, who abstains from the initiation of force, who abstains from adultery and other vices. And if one exhibits that kind of morality, then it is of little importance how one justifies it, provided that a justification can be persuasive and compelling and sustainable. Reason number 6 for atheism is the conviction that certain ideas about gods are self-contradictory. Many atheists take issue with the specific attributes that believers ascribe to particular gods. This especially applies to the monotheist faiths, where God is most often characterized as simultaneously omnipotent, omniscient, and omnibenevolent, an inherent contradiction according to many atheists. Furthermore, many atheists are skeptical of the idea that a God created the universe, particularly if they do not believe that the universe ever was or needed to be created. When examining the gods of other faiths, deities somewhat more limited in their powers, atheists often perceive contradictions in the formulations of those gods as well, or at least a lack of empirical evidence that the gods have the powers that they are thought to have, or dwell in locations described as their homes. For instance, despite numerous individuals having climbed Mount Olympus, Zeus has been nowhere to be found. As atheists vary dramatically in the specific content of their positive convictions, they will diverge substantially as to the more specific arguments they will present for their disbelief in a god. My own 5 arguments for the non-existence of God, which is linked to in the resources section accompanying this video, are offered as some of my personal reasons for atheism, though they are not necessarily shared by atheists at large. In conclusion, atheism has too often been unjustly smeared as an opposition to morality, or a totalitarian dogma advocating mass extermination of religious persons. It is nothing of the sort. It is neither a religion nor a philosophy, but rather the absence of one particular kind of belief. In the positive contents of their worldviews, atheists diverge from one another as dramatically as they might from certain religious worldviews. Many atheists might find closer intellectual kinship with some religious persons than with some other atheists. Nothing in atheism dictates opposition to religion or intolerance of religious individuals. On the contrary, there exists a tremendous potential for positive exchanges, both material and intellectual, between those who believe in a God and those who do not. While some atheists are indeed of dubious moral standing, so is a roughly proportional number among the adherents of any particular religion. It is not atheism or religiosity that leads some to desire to oppress, coerce, intimidate, slander, or demean others. Rather, it is sheer savagery and inhumanity. Against this inhumanity, the good persons of every creed can unite.